Monster kill.
He's in. This fight's over. It is all over.
If we go down,
we are finally just a few short days away from UFC 225, one of the biggest star-studded cards of the year so far. The main event is amazing, the co-main event is even more amazing, and the entire card is extremely stacked. Some of the biggest names in the sport are on this card, and without a doubt, it's going to sell a lot of pay-per-views. Without any further ado, let's get right into these main card predictions. We're starting off with a fight that has a lot of controversy surrounding it. For the first matchup on the main card, we have CM Punk versus Mike Jackson. A lot of people are angry that two 0-1 fighters got the opening slot on the main card. Guys, it's obviously about money, so we just have to look past that. In terms of the actual fight, since these guys are relatively on the same skill level, they're both beginners, I think it could be entertaining. So maybe don't count it out just yet. I mean, it's CM Punk, so just the fact that he's fighting is going to attract new fans and attention to the sport, and there's nothing wrong with that, so I agree with Dana's decision to let him fight again. I just don't know if it was such a good idea for him if he's planning on winning, because even though Mike Jackson is 0-1 and also lost to Mickey Gall, I would say that Mike has a lot more experience than CM Punk, but there's really not that much to analyze here since these fighters are basically just brand new to the sport. They've only been pros for one fight each, so I'm not going to go too in-depth with an analysis because you really can't, but since Mike Jackson has more experience than CM Punk, and he probably has better striking than CM Punk, I just think he's going to win a decision. Not really caring too much if I get this one right or wrong. I would like CM Punk to win just so it would be a good storyline. But I got to say, I think Mike Jackson is going to win by decision. Next up on the main card, we have former champion Andrei Arlovski versus Tuivasa. I have to say, I thought Andrei was done. When he was on that 5-fight losing streak, I was like, Andrei, man, you really need to hang it up and stop. But now he's currently on a 2-fight winning streak, and it looks like he could turn his career around. On the other hand, Tuivasa is undefeated. He's looked amazing in all of his UFC fights, and everyone he's fought so far has broken under his pressure. The analysis for this fight is pretty straightforward. Even though Andrei's on a 2-fight winning streak, his last 2 wins were very slow-paced fights, especially the Struve fight. I think there was something wrong with Struve. I think he was having some heart issue or something because he was barely even moving, and it was just a really slow-paced, boring fight. Against Tuivasa, it's not going to be like that at all. It's going to be, for the first round at least, Ty is going to put extreme amounts of pressure on Andrei. Not to mention that Ty hits extremely hard as well, and unlike most heavyweights, he's not just limited to punches. He can throw head kicks and flying knees. So I think Andrei is going to crumble under the pressure here and probably succumb to a first-round knockout. I really like Andrei, but I don't think he's going to be able to handle Tuivasa, so I got to say that I think Ty is going to win by first-round knockout. Next up, we have Holly Holm versus Megan Anderson. I'm well aware that the Australian pronunciation is Megan, but I'm American, so I'm going to say Megan. The UFC does not have her pictured. If you're not familiar with her just by her name, this is what she looks like. The UFC signed her a long time ago, maybe over a year ago, and she hasn't fought yet. This is her UFC debut, and they have her against Holly Holm. I have a slight problem with this. This is probably the only fight on the entire card that I have like a personal issue with. I think the UFC matchmakers have really dropped the ball with the women's featherweight division, rather. It actually could be good. They could have had a good season of Tough to start it off, but instead they got like a bunch of bantamweights coming up fighting Cyborg, and then they have Megan Anderson, who actually is a featherweight prospect. She's a true featherweight, but yet they have her making her debut against somebody as good as Holly Holm. It's just, they really dropped the ball, and now Cyborg's talking about leaving, but I'll save that for another video or something. My prediction for this fight is kind of why I have a personal issue with it, just because I feel like they could have actually marketed Megan Anderson the right way, had her beat a couple people that came on from a potential season of Tough, build her up in the featherweight rankings. By the way, there's not even featherweight rankings now, but like I said, I'm not trying to go off on that tangent. I just feel like they're wasting a new prospect. I think Holly Holm striking is probably the best female striking in the entire UFC, and I think she's going to pick apart Megan Anderson and like embarrass her. I just really feel that way. I don't think Megan's going to be able to touch Holly on the feet whatsoever. I think Megan's only chance would be to take Holly down. But that brings me to my next point. In the Holly Holm versus Cyborg fight, I would definitely say that Cyborg had much more power than Holly, but it was kind of weird because every time they got in the clinch, I would actually say Holly was the stronger female. I mean, she was pretty much bullying Cyborg around in the clinch, and she was able to move her around at will. So I don't think Megan is going to be able to get into a clinch position and take Holly down unless she just shoots for a wild takedown and maybe gets lucky. I really do think Holly Holm's going to pick apart Megan on the feet. And I think it's going to ultimately go to a decision where Holly Holm wins. Megan does have the physical advantages, but I don't think that's going to be enough, especially for a UFC debut. So with this fight, I say that Holly wins a dominant decision with her amazing striking skills. For the co-main event, we have the most anticipated fight of the year by far. This is the fight I'm personally looking forward to the most. We have Rafael dos Anjos versus Colby Covington. There's been a lot of build-up to this fight, obviously with Colby's background and beef with Brazil, and Rafael wants to stand up for his country. There's just a lot of back and forth, and I do happen to think that that's going to translate into a very entertaining fight. Damian Maia and Colby Covington also had a similar beef, and that was the only Damian Maia performance in recent memory that was actually entertaining. I feel like Dos Anjos versus Covington is going to be extremely entertaining, and it will probably single-handedly bring love and attention back to the welterweight division. So in terms of this matchup, I feel like a lot of people really aren't giving Colby Covington the credit he deserves just because he talks so much and has a Twitter personality, a villain-esque Twitter personality that a lot of people don't like whatsoever. But the dude is legit, no doubt. I mean, he's kind of like John Fitch, Khabib type, very dominant wrestling. If he gets his hands on you, he's most likely going to take you down. And we all know that against Khabib, RDA struggled and got taken down multiple times. He couldn't handle that pressure. And Colby Covington is also a pressure fighter. But I am going to give RDA the credit he deserves here. He has looked good at welterweight. Some people would say he hasn't fought good enough competition in his last 3 fights. I would agree with that a little bit, but he looked dominant in every performance, especially against Robbie Lawler. And against Colby Covington, I would say that RDA has the advantage in the striking, but that's kind of where it stops. I mean, Colby's the bigger guy, the younger guy, and I think the stronger guy. Colby's wrestling, I think, is going to be able to neutralize RDA's striking. As soon as he gets his hands on RDA, I think it's going to be taken down. I think Colby would have a lot of problems if he decided to stay on the feet and strike, but I think he's basically going to be able to take RDA down at will. Both of these guys, most of their fights go to a decision, and I feel like this could as well. I feel like Colby is probably going to take RDA down and grind him out throughout the rounds. I really don't see RDA having takedown defense that can stop Colby. I mean, Colby's a Pac-10 champion, really good college wrestler, and RDA has struggled against that type of pressure wrestling in the past. A lot of people are picking RDA to win and picking him by knockout and stuff like that and saying he's going to KO Colby in the first round. I don't think that's likely at all. With Colby Covington, he's never been knocked out, never been TKO'd. There's never been a moment in a fight where he got wobbled, and RDA didn't even knock out Robbie Lawler, who had a torn meniscus. It was a good fight and a dominant performance, but Robbie's chin has kind of been gone, and a lot of people would say he lost to Donald Cerrone. So the fact that RDA didn't knock out Neil Magny, who's been knocked out before, or Robbie Lawler, who'd been recently knocked out, why would you think he's going to knock out Colby Covington, who's young and never even been touched on the chin? It's just like, guys, that's not going to happen. And if it does, it would be luck. It's just not likely at all. So RDA by knockout is not a smart prediction at all. I also happen to think that a lot of people are picking this fight based on emotion. I think they really don't like Colby Covington, and that makes them pick RDA. But I feel like picking Colby Covington is a smart move here, especially if the odds have RDA as a big favorite just based on people's emotions. I think Colby is going to showcase a really dominant performance. I think it really is his time. I think he's on a title run right now. I think he's going to beat RDA in a dominant performance using his wrestling and grappling skills. He'll probably hold RDA down the entire time and maybe even get a submission, but I do think we're going to see a dominant performance out of Colby Covington, and I think a lot of people are going to be shocked. I won't be shocked because I think this is a great matchup for Colby. Once again, my prediction is Colby Covington by submission or decision. I feel like those are some smart picks right there. Finally, for the main event, we have a middleweight title challenge. Champion Robert Whittaker is taking on the #1 contender Yoel Romero, who is coming off of a beautiful knockout victory over Luke Rockhold. Robert has been out for a while. He's had a couple injuries. I know he had the knee injury, and then he had a staph infection in his bloodstream, and he had chickenpox. So it's been a pretty tough year for Robert Whittaker. On the other hand, Yoel has been in perfect shape, and he's been getting victories. So I don't necessarily think this fight is going to play out like the first matchup at all. I would actually give Yoel Romero the advantage coming in. He's had a fight recently. I think he's injury-free, and Robert might have to take ring rust and his injuries into account. So I think this is going to be a completely different matchup than the first time. The first time they fought, I'd say that Robert won because he proved to have the superior cardio. But going into this second matchup, I don't think he has that same advantage. And I honestly would give Yoel Romero the physical advantages, obviously because Robert has gone through all the injuries and staph and all the stuff that he's been through. Based off of the first fight, we already know that this matchup is probably going to go to a tough, gritty decision, except this time I do believe that Yoel Romero will come out on top. I just think he's going to be able to use his wrestling and striking more efficiently than he did in the first fight. I don't think he's going to gas out. I think his cardio is going to be fine for this. And obviously Robert has had some health issues and hasn't had a fight since the last Yoel Romero fight. So I do think Yoel Romero is going to take this by decision, and I think we're going to have a new middleweight champion.